Hello, I'm Cindy Palm, lay speaker here at First United Methodist Church in downtown Elgin, Illinois, and this is your motivational moment from the Bible. These motivational moments are intended to go along with the sermon you heard on Sunday. Maybe they can be a little devotional to start your week, or maybe they'll just give you an extra boost for your day. For the past several weeks, I have been, almost obsessed with thinking about the fires in California. Every day, I check to see where the fires are. I look to see how far they have spread, and I try to find data to see if there have been any improvements in their ability to contain them. I then go to my Instagram account, and I search for stories or videos of people who have lost everything. So many people have recorded their experience, starting with footage from their home as it once was, then showing the fire far away at first with optimism that everything will be okay. And then, as it gets closer, with the realization that evacuation is imminent. And finally, their return to a pile of ash and rubble. And while that may sound a bit bizarre, why would you take the time to record this? It does give the rest of us an understanding of what has happened and the extent of the damage and the loss they have suffered. I also think it may provide a sense of closure for them, because the sense of disbelief over what has just happened is overwhelming, as we can all imagine. I found a video of a man who stayed at his home as long as he possibly could in an attempt to save it, until he had no choice but to admit that it was a battle he could not win. He even had a team of firemen who happened to be in the area trying to help. But the fire hydrants ran dry, and all they could do was stand in the street and watch as flames engulfed his house. I know this probably sounds morbidly weird, and I'm not sure why it captures me the way it does, but I did the same thing when fires raged through the town of Lahaina on the island of Maui 18 months ago. It took a long time for me to let it go, and it probably will be a while before I let this go as well. At the time of this recording, the fires in California are still not fully contained. I pray that by the time you see this, they will be fully extinguished, so that putting the pieces of these people's lives back together can begin. Maybe the reason I'm so drawn to this is that both Lahaina and Los Angeles are places that mean something to me. They are places I have visited. They are places that are special to me. And in the case of Los Angeles, it's a place that I know very well. So maybe in a weird kind of way, these fires feel personal, as if I have lost memories right along with the people who live there. But I think it's more than that. I think these fires are jolting reminders of how we live our lives. In the case of tornadoes and hurricanes, there is not a total loss of everything. Yes, there is extensive damage to property. Homes are wiped out, but things can still be salvaged from the wreck. With a fire, everything is gone. Nothing remains. The loss is total and complete. And that is a hard truth that comes for all of us, even when it's not our house that is burned down. It's one of those life moments that forces us to look in the mirror and face the reality of what we value. And I don't know about you, but it's a reality that's hard to bear, because it brings into sharp focus what our priorities truly are. In the book Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster, one of the spiritual disciplines that he talks about is the discipline of simplicity. Spiritual disciplines are behaviors that can guide us towards a closer walk with Christ. And I don't think it was just a coincidence that I happened to be working through that particular chapter as the fires raged in California, especially when you consider that I put the book down over the Christmas holiday. Had I worked on it through the holiday, I would have been on a different chapter. I love how God uses everything to speak to us, even in uncomfortable ways. In The Discipline of Simplicity, Richard Foster not only talks about the unnecessary need for so much stuff, but he also talks about the way we clutter our lives with worry, fear, and stress as we try to maintain control of every aspect of our lives. Control that is a fool's errand, because there is a limit to how much control we actually have. This reality hit me hard during the pandemic, and I was convinced that going forward, I was going to live one day at a time and in full trust of God. Because if the pandemic taught me nothing, it definitely taught me that. Ha! Who am I kidding? 5 years later, and it's like the pandemic never happened. So why do we do this? Why does it take a disaster, either ours or someone else's, to bring us back to seeing life clearly, to seeing how our lives should be, to seeing what our priorities should be? And how do we find comfort in the fact that life is fragile and can turn on a dime at any moment? In the notes that I took while reading this chapter on the spiritual discipline of simplicity, I wrote, let's be honest. Outside of the necessities of life, most of what we own is for the purpose of self-soothing. Think about it. After a long day at work, I like to sit down with a good book or watch a movie on TV. There are crafts that I enjoy doing or music I like to listen to. All of it for the sole purpose of centering me and helping me refocus. It's not enough to simply have the necessities of life. I also want the creature comforts that can enhance my life. And just to be on the safe side, I continue to search for other ways to self-soothe. I've found that scrolling through social media shows me all sorts of ways I can do that. And then, once we own all this stuff, we don't want to let it go. It suddenly takes on a life of its own, and it dictates how we live. We are afraid to face life without our self-soothers, without our creature comforts. But what we are actually doing is attempting to hold on to something that never was: security. The Bible tells us over and over that this game plan will not work, like ever. Richard Foster quotes 20 Bible verses on the dangers of misplaced priorities and a desire for material things. I've used many of them as preludes to collecting the offering each Sunday. The bottom line, we cannot serve two masters. We cannot trust God and our stuff. It's tempting to sound like an evangelical preacher at this point and say the answer is to seek first the kingdom of God, which, by the way, is what Richard Foster tells his readers to do. And while that is definitely true, I think there is a better way to put it that resonates with this materialistic and misguided world that we live in. I think we need to take the people who have lost everything by the hand and walk with them as they survey the ashes that were once their home. I think we need to stand with them in this horrific loss that every soul on earth can feel and understand. And I think we need to see our own stuff in that same heap of ash and debris, gone in an instant, because our lives can turn on a dime. The surrender to Christ is so hard, and yet something like a wildfire can remind us that we really do have no other choice. It starts with Christ and it ends with Christ. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And everything in between is fleeting and temporary. Its ability to soothe is also fleeting and temporary. But the love of God is forever. His balm soothes away the stress and fear and hurt of everything. And while picking up the Bible isn't always as fun as picking up the latest bestseller, you can do something that bestseller will never do. It will change your life. It will give you a peace that surpasses all understanding when your heart and mind are with Christ Jesus. I know it's hard to do when the world is telling us everything we need to make a perfect life. But that, my friends, is fake news. Jesus is the truth, and he can help you create a divine center that nothing can destroy. One video in particular that touched my heart was that of a man who was coming back to survey the damage to his house. Of course, it was entirely gone. He had a small dog with him and told a neighbor who was also there and recording that he wasn't able to get his other dog out in time. He stood at the end of his driveway, and despite the carnage before him, he called out the dog's name in what was certain to be a feeble effort. Suddenly, a small dog came up over the pile of rubble and down the driveway to his daddy, who scooped him up in tears of sheer joy. How that tiny creature survived is anybody's guess. But none of the stuff in his former home mattered in that moment. With both of his dogs safe, he had everything he needed. The rest could be sorted out later. That's what faith in God creates. The gifts we have been given, love, family, friends, and the comfort of his word are all that matters. God is well aware of what we need, and he will always provide it. The rest can be sorted out later, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. This is what we need to remember. While preparing this video, I was searching the internet for inspiring articles about the California fire, and I came across this quote. I'm not sure who the author is, but they said, "I will be the first to confess that more times than not, if given the choice between a stable existence without God or an unstable existence with God, I'd choose stability." Well, friends, I don't know about you, but I would never, ever choose that. No matter how bad things ever got, I would choose God every single time. Now, because this is a motivational moment from the Bible, I suppose I should quote the Bible at some point, just to make it legit. So, for all those who have lost their homes, who have lost loved ones, who have to start over from scratch, with all my heart, I give you this from Isaiah. I have redeemed you, and I will be with you. As the waters rise, as the fires bear down upon you, as the land beneath your feet begins to crumble, you are mine, and I am here. I'm Cindy Palm, and this is your motivational moment from the Bible. Have a good week.